Hello, my bookish friends. How are you? I'm Elizabeth. This is Reading Riley. Welcome. We're doing a wrap-up for February. Okay. Cheers. Okay, so let's get right into it. I did not read as much this month as I did in January, which is to be expected. It's a shorter month. I think I got a little excited in January. That's all right. But I read 7 books. I had 2 5-star, 2 nonfiction, 1 4-star, and 2 3.5 stars. So all around, not too shabby if you ask me. So the first book I read was So You Want to Talk About Race by Ijeoma Oluo. This is a nonfiction book, and this one is really interesting. If you don't prefer sort of anecdotal nonfiction books, then I would maybe steer clear of this one because it is anecdotal, but I personally really enjoy that, so I had a good time with this. I learned a lot. The cool thing about this is that she kind of tells you the do's and don'ts from all perspectives. So she'll say, like, if you are a BIPOC, then consider this. If you are a white person, then consider this, which I really appreciated because I took so much away from this. But yeah, it's very anecdotal, tells you about her life and her story, and she's so, as a person, just so patient when it comes to race and so open and vulnerable about her feelings, and I have so much respect for her after reading this. So let me just give you a few little bit of tidbits in here. So there's 2 definitions of racism, and I feel like if you come to understand that there are these 2 definitions, then a lot of the discussions that are being had can easily be worked out with the understanding that you have a different definition of what racism actually is. So in the past, and what some people view as racism is simply any prejudice against someone because of their race, which you think, okay, yeah, of course, that's it. But what this kind of new definition of racism, and a definition that has a kind of broader scope and a broader spectrum and kind of gets to the point of the racism that we're dealing with here and now in 2021. This definition is much more useful and very useful in the conversations that are being had in this book. And that is, racism is any prejudice against someone because of their race when those views are reinforced by systems of power. So they're very close definitions, but by adding that, when the views are reinforced by a system of power, we come to kind of a different understanding of what our modern racism entails. And they dramatically change how you look at and address racism in America. She says, when we only use the first definition of racism as any prejudice against someone based on race, we inaccurately reduce issues of race in America to a battle for the hearts and minds of individual racists instead of seeing racist behaviors and racial oppression as part of a larger system. So I think that's just a really great way to start this conversation. There are all of the different chapters. I'll kind of give you a tidbit on the things that she goes over in here so you know in case you want to read this. So for example, that chapter was called What is Racism? There's a chapter 3, What if I talk about race wrong, where she addresses that. Chapter 4, Why am I always being told to check my privilege, in which she talks about how everyone has privilege. We all have different privileges, but it's important to understand what yours are in order to understand where you are in this conversation and how to try to empathize with other people in a more accurate way, if that makes any sense. She talks about intersectionality, and that is kind of goes along with privilege. She talks about the school to prison pipeline. Why can't I say the N-word is chapter 9. What is cultural appropriation? What are microaggressions? So she goes into all of these different topics. She gives experiences of her own life along the way. And I just thought it was really useful. It made me feel, as a white woman, more confident to talk about race, to allow myself to be an ally for the cause. for equality. I really appreciate it, and I highly recommend this. Okay, the next book I read this month was Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. I was going to say Halia Tibbert. What's wrong with me? By Talia Hibbert. Okay, Get a Life, Chloe Brown. This series is a revelation. Okay, a revelation. Okay, so if you don't know, this story, Get a Life, Chloe Brown, is the first in a series or in 3 books about these the Brown sisters. And I guess it's not a trilogy, I guess it's companion books, because each book talks about each sister. You have Chloe, you have Danny, and then you have Eve. Eve Brown comes out March 9th, by the way. So this first book, all of these 3 women they grew up in kind of this in a life of privilege. They have this mansion, they have staff, they have, they're doing pretty good. And Chloe, though, she's dealing with, I believe it's fibromyalgia. Oh no, what is that? Chloe is dealing with fibromyalgia, chronic pain, and insomnia. And where her story starts is that she is still living at home with her parents, and since she's been dealing with this kind of chronic pain and all of this stuff going on in her life, she's lost contact with all of the people in her life, and she's lonely, except for, her sisters and her family. She has them, but she's very lonely, and she realized she has no life. So her plan is to get a life. So she makes a kind of bucket list, if you will, and decides that she is going to start checking them off one by one. And some of them are big tasks and some of them are small tasks. But her first one is to move out of the house. So she gets her own apartment, and she kind of lives on her own for the first time. And so she's navigating this experience. And the thing I love about Chloe is that she is this kind of posh, chic woman. She runs her own website, business, building websites, and she comes off as kind of a snob, but really she's not, but she's just kind of very poised and posh and likes to do things her own way. So when she moves in here, she meets the maintenance man, who is Red, and he is like this fully tatted dude and redhead, and he, in my head, is Dimitri from Anastasia. But anyway, so they have kind of this hate to love trope. They don't really hate each other, but they have a few run-ins with each other when they first meet, and he thinks she's a snob and she thinks he's trying too hard to be goody-goody. And so Red is also dealing with PTSD from an abusive relationship. So I appreciate that, because they do show this other side of abusive relationships where the man is the one being abused emotionally and manipulated, gaslighted, all of that. Gaslit? I don't know. But anyway, so they obviously fall in love, but it's so sweet the way that he cares for her. He is such a wonderful character, and so is she. And the way that she kind of is wholesome in her own way, where she is afraid of using him, but he helps her check off her checklist. And it's just a really awesome romantic comedy. And that being said, we'll go into the next book that I read this month, which is Take a Hint, Danny Brown, which is the second book in the series. I could not resist. I immediately bought it after I finished Chloe Brown. So one thing that I will say is that when I first picked up Chloe Brown, I was kind of taken aback by the juxtaposition between the dialogue of Chloe and this kind of posh, very uptight, very poised, and the way that the kind of steamy scenes were written was very in your face, a lot of, and I was like, what? Is this the same author? What's happening right now? So that threw me off a little bit. By the time I got to this book, I realized this is just Talia Hibbert's style, and once I was expecting it, I wasn't so by the language. And I think also that the fact that Chloe is just so polished, it was a vast difference in the writing style, so it at first just kind of took me aback a little bit. But it's the same here. It's on purpose. and it's great and it's effective. Anyway, take a hint, Dani Brown. Dani is the middle sister of the Brown sisters. She is getting her doctorates and she's also teaching, and she is very detached and unsentimental. She doesn't want to be distracted from her goal of getting her doctorates, but she wants to be sexually satisfied. So she aims to find a buddy. And she tries it with one of her coworkers. But the coworker ends up catching feelings for her, and she just doesn't get it because she's like, why can't you separate sex from love? I don't understand. And so anyway, she meets Zaf, and Zaf is the security guard in the building where she works. So every day they pass and they have little kind of cute kind of interactions. One day they're doing a fire drill, and Chloe actually does get locked in the elevator, and Zaf thinks she's in actual danger, and so he runs and rescues her and carries her out of the building. Meanwhile, all these college students catch it on camera, and it goes viral. And everyone thinks they're a couple and that they're so amazingly cute, and so they feel like they have to live up to these expectations. On top of that, Zaf he's going through a lot of trauma because he lost members of his family in, I think, a car accident. And so he doesn't want this attention because he used to be a pro rugby? Oh shit, was it rugby? He was a pro sportser. He doesn't want his family's accident to become part of the narrative of the media. And so, but he has started this kind of nonprofit for boys, which is so sweet, where he teaches young athletes to deal with their emotions and to kind of bridge that gap between athleticism and emotionality. And so, which I think is a beautiful thing. And so he wants to use this media attention to help his nonprofit. And so Dani agrees to do a kind of fake dating scenario in which he starts to thaw her cold heart, and she helps him become a better person along the way. And it's just so beautiful and touching and romantic and steamy and lovely. And I love them both. I love them all. And I cannot wait for Eve Brown. Next, I read, I don't have this physical book, but it's right here. Reasons to Stay Alive by Matt Haig, who, if you've been watching my channel, you understand that my level of obsession with Matt Haig. I feel so seen by his writing and his... Okay, let me tell you what this book's about. So this is his quote-unquote memoir, but it's really his discussion of his own depression and anxiety. So it's not like his whole life story, but it encompasses a large amount of that. So as a person who suffers from anxiety, I just found myself nodding my head the entire time. Like, yes, yes, yes. And he reminds us of the terror, and both the terror and the beauty of humanity, in that while pain is universal, so is love. And he talks about his life and all of what he went through and when he was at his darkest. And he has all of these statistics and lists, which I love. I love a list. And just so beautifully navigates this subject, and in such a vulnerable way that I can't help but to respect him even more after reading this. So if you have struggled with depression or anxiety, or you are, I implore you to give this book a read, because it's a lot of times when you do suffer with those things, it tends to make you feel alone in your suffering, alone in your anxiety, alone in your depression. And somehow Matt Haig has the ability to make you feel like he's there with you. And I just can't recommend it enough. Moving forward, I read Remote Control by Nnedi Okorafor. So this is a novella. It's a sci-fi novella. I don't know if you can see that. The cover's stunning. Can you see this? I mean, it's a little shiny, but just stunning, okay? Beautiful, beautiful cover. So this follows Fatima, and or also known as Sankofa. So this Fatima is a 5-year-old girl, and she's kind of a dreamer. This is based off of a kind of near future village in Ghana, and she is a dreamer. She spends her days in her backyard, kind of staring up at the sky, at the stars, and drawing what she calls skywards in the sky and connecting constellations. And she also suffers from malaria quite often. For whatever reason, the mosquitoes are attracted to her more than others, and just every couple or every few months she comes down with malaria, so she often has these fevers, and she's kind of a weak child in that sense. I mean, not that I'm placing any kind of judgment on her, but in that sense, she's quite often sick. And so one day, this seed falls down from the sky, and it just buries under the ground. And she has this tree in her backyard that she likes to climb, and the roots kind of uplift and bring her this seed, and say it's kind of like an offering to her. So she takes it, and then this cloud of green energy just surrounds her, and she connects with the seed, it connects with her, they create this bond, and from then on she starts to change. And we follow her through her kind of teenage years, early teenage years, but basically one day she accidentally kills her entire village. Someone came and took her seed away from her. I guess I should have said that first. They took her seed, and her father sold it for a ton of money and got her a new dress and all this stuff, but then she gets so upset and accidentally kills her entire village. She like blinks and they're all dead. So the rest of this book is her journey trying to find this seed, trying to come to terms with these quote-unquote powers, and trying not to kill anybody. And we're following her as she kind of deals with her loneliness and her grieving and her growing up. She's just a kid. And so it's actually written really beautifully. Nnedi Okorafor's writing is really melodic in a sense, and I really did enjoy the writing. The story, however, it just, for me, I didn't have enough plot. Although it was beautiful, and I would highly recommend it for people that love more character-driven stories, it just wasn't enough plot for me. But at the same time, I respect it. I think it's a great read, and I would recommend it, but I gave it 3.5 stars. But that's a me thing, so consider reading it if you like a little bit of sci-fi, if you like a nice quick novella, if you want a fresh perspective, if you want melodic writing, and you know, if you want to fall in love with this little girl, because she is just a pure soul. Just a pure soul. Next, I read, what did I read? I feel like I'm missing something. Nope. So next, I read The Minders this month. Oh, and that one is a John Mars book, and it is based in the near future. It is in the same kind of world as The One and The Passengers, also by John Mars. So you don't have to have read those to read this book, but I would recommend it because it gives you oh my God, the ear just came out. It gives you a better understanding of what's going on. And even having had that, but it's been a while since I have read those books, but I still kind of had a little bit of trouble navigating this book. But let me give you the synopsis. So in this near future, the government has found a way to implant all of their secret knowledge into a human being. And these people that they implant all of these secrets into are called the Minders. Now, they have to find a specific type of person to put this microchip with all this DNA and information into, and that person has to have synesthesia. Now, synesthesia is, it's kind of a brain anomaly where all of your senses are combined. You can see music, like music is colorful, and I don't know really how to explain it, but all of your senses you can touch and hear and feel and see all at the same time, and smell, and it's really cool actually. And so anyway, we follow these 5 Minders and their kind of journey. This microchip affects them all in different ways. They're being hunted down by this hacker collective group that is trying to get their information, If you want to know more about it, you can watch my last vlog, a vlog for weirdos that I posted last week, and I went into a little bit more depth into it. And then the last book, which is also covered in my vlog that I posted last week, is going to be When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. Now, this one is a thriller based in Brooklyn, New York, in the small suburb of Brooklyn. Oh my gosh, what's it called now? Yes, so it's set in the small suburb of Brooklyn called Gifford Place. We're following two perspectives. We have Sydney and Theo. Sydney, she grew up here, but she moved away when she got married. She's now moved back. She's going through a divorce, and she's back in her mother's home that she grew up in. This town is, or this area of the burb is being gentrified, and this drug research center is supposed to be moving in, which is supposed to be good for the neighborhood, but no one in the neighborhood wants this. They don't want to change anything. It's being gentrified, and they're not having it. They're not about that. Sydney realizes that there are actually quite a few white people that are moving into the neighborhood, which would be fine, but there is also something sinister going on, and Theo is one of those people that is moving in. He moves in. They end up working together to try to research the history of the town and start a tour of their own of the town that includes the Black history of the neighborhood. And did I tell you this was a mainly Black town, but it hadn't always been. And so anyway, a lot of shit goes down that is racially motivated and overt and honestly disgusting, and it at some points was very difficult to read. But there's a little bit of humor in there, there's a little bit of steam in there, there's a little bit of everything, honestly. And the kind of racist, the overtly racist things that go down in this book are an amalgamation of all kinds of things that have happened, that happen every day, but also it takes it to kind of an extreme. So it's really a social commentary about that, but this is also about community and looking out for one another and coming together to ward off the bad guy, basically. But yeah, a lot of talk about racial inequity, about redlining, about generational wealth, and it was really interesting read. I gave it 4 stars. So I definitely would recommend this for anyone, really, if you like thrillers, if you want to read about the kind of social commentary of things that are going on in our country right now, in my country, in the States. I don't know where you're from, but probably around the world, honestly.
No, mostly here.
But anyway, yeah, it was a really interesting read, and I would definitely recommend this. Okay, and that's gonna be it for my February wrap-up. If you're still with me, thank you. I appreciate you as always. If you enjoyed this content, please maybe consider subscribing if you haven't already, and maybe consider hitting that thumbs up button if you've read these books. If you want to talk about them, always down for that. Please leave a comment down below. And yeah, I guess that'll be it for this video. I will see you guys soon with another video, but until then, don't forget that life is short, so read Wryly. Cheers.